CCP?
Well, Taiwan is a beacon of hope. It's an oasis of freedom. Oh, I think deterrence is the linchpin to preventing an invasion with Taiwan, peace through strength, which is why the $11 billion sale
Package,
sends another message to the dictatorship in Beijing that we're not kidding, we're standing by our ally.
新闻硬邦邦听新闻最爽，我是节目主持人斯坦，欢迎各位收看。我现在在美国 Washington D.C.， 也就是在华府这边，背后这一栋是非常知名的国会大厦。那我们今天呢要拜访国会议员，一个服务非常久的共和党籍议员叫 Chris Smith。那他的办公室在这边，在 Rayburn 这一栋大楼。我们采访他之前，当然是要先安检一下。Hi everyone and welcome to the Freedom is Not Free and 新闻硬邦邦听新闻最爽 channels. Today I have an honor to interview Representative Christopher Smith from New Jersey here in Washington D.C. Chris Smith is a senior member of the United States Congress and one of Capitol Hill's most respected voices on human rights and international freedom. Representing New Jersey, he has served in Congress for 46 years, that's more than 4 decades, and is a long leader on issues ranging from religious freedom and political prisoners to democracy promotion and accountability for authoritarian regimes. Congressman Smith is a founding member of the Congressional Executive Commission on China, CECC. He has consistently emphasized Taiwan's importance as a democratic partner and a key pillar of stability in the Indo-Pacific. Representative, thank you so much.
Stan, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Thank you. So today we will cover issues of Indo-Pacific strategy, of human rights in China, and of the role of Taiwan. From your perspective, how central is Taiwan to the broader challenge of countering authoritarian coercion from the CCP?
Well, Taiwan is a beacon of hope. It's an oasis of freedom. We are absolutely committed to Taiwan. I mean, it shows that where democracy flourishes, the people thrive as well. Unlike the mainland China, where repression is everywhere under Xi Jinping now. So it shows that the system of government and the ideology that's being followed makes all the difference in the world. We saw it in Europe. You had East Germany and West Germany. Yep. East Germany was nothing but a gulag state, as is China, mainland China. And the people suffered immensely. Even when there were economic reforms in the mainland of China, the political ability to free speech, to assemble, to practice your faith are all not just frowned upon, they are severely repressed with torture and all kinds of other terrible misdeeds by Xi Jinping and his thugs.
Yeah. And still, they like to highlight that they have alleviated many people from poverty. But do you think that the data we see about Chinese economy and the level of living and life conditions?
Well, I don't believe much of anything that government puts out. It goes through the filter of propaganda of putting 5-year plans, this, that, and the other thing, reminiscent of the Soviet Union. They always had 5-year plans too. The Chinese Communist Party, however, has been enabled by many in the world, especially big business, and that's unfortunate. On May 26, 1994, President Bill Clinton delinked, severed the tie of trade with human rights, and in a way, and it's marked, it's very discernible. That's when we lost human rights to a very large degree on mainland China, and it was disgusting what he did. The people, I had been there many times, particularly post Tiananmen Square massacre, and when he linked human rights, I'm a Republican, he's a Democrat, nothing but accolades for President Clinton. And then on a Friday afternoon, May 26, 1994, he takes all of the linkage to, yes, unless there's serious and sustained progress in the area of human rights, there's no more trade the way they want to get it. There's all kinds of sanctions that happen, tariffs and barriers to trade that kick in, and he got rid of it all and got nothing in return. It was one of the worst, it was one of the most pivotal things our government has ever done to advance dictatorship, and it was Bill Clinton. I wrote op-eds on it, in the Wall Street Journal. That day when he did it, I did a press conference, and I said, mark my words, I'm no prophet, but beginning in this day, the Chinese Communist Party will have free rein against its own people to do horrific things to them, including torture and murder. And the West will look and say, but do we have another trade deal? Is there another trade deal? And I'm all for trade, but it has to be conditioned on human rights protections.
Congressman, do you think it was a mistake to think that economic development will bring democracy to China?
Total. And I said it right from the beginning. I'm not the only one. There were people like Congressman Frank Wolf, a good friend of mine, a human rights champion on religious freedom. We all said, why do you think that a dictatorship run by a very, very cruel military and secret police are going to turn around and say, oh, because we have a few more items in the store to buy, that's going to cause them to matriculate from dictatorship to a democracy. Instead, just the opposite happened. They got richer, they being the apparatchiks of China, and not only did they get richer, their military became world-class, courtesy of the U.S. taxpayer, courtesy of the taxpayers in Europe and elsewhere, and big business that was doing all of this. They enabled it. I fought it very, very hard, and we lost, at least largely, and we're continuing to fight till we win. But to this day, the naivete, or was it just selfishness on the part of these big business tycoons to make the next buck? Many of their trade secrets, the idea of copyright infringement has been manifest throughout China. You get something going on, then they take it, and they steal it. And next thing you know, well, you made your couple of $1 billion, but now they have how you did it in terms of whatever that application is. Google and these other companies were shameless in their enabling. I had hearings on it myself. I had Google testify in 2006, Yahoo, Microsoft, and those at a very important hearing. Tech giants. And they were like, the internet, if you put in Tiananmen Square, typed it in, you would get all this wonderful pictures of happy people. No tanks, no bayonets, nothing that happened during and in the aftermath of the Tiananmen Square massacre. Nothing. And Google was enabling every bit of it, as was Yahoo and the others. If you go online and you put in torture, you don't get anything about what they do every single day in their prisons. So I was shocked, but not surprised about how willing companies were to do this. I even in one of those hearings brought out that during the Holocaust, IBM aided and abetted the Gestapo in finding the Jews. There was a book called IBM and the Holocaust, and I started my opening comments at that hearing with Google talking about that. It was heavily footnoted, the book. Why did the Gestapo always have all these lists of the Jews and who they were and where they were? Courtesy of IBM and others, but they especially. And ditto for these companies. Yahoo shamelessly opened up their personally identifiable information to the secret police. And it's like, all these other people then got picked up by, in the case of human rights activists, Shirtao, all of a sudden they were finding out who they all were and arresting them. So, this has got to stop. China has to change. We want to stand by Taiwan because China wants to do to Xi Jinping, Beijing wants to do to Taiwan exactly what they've done to Hong Kong now. And they've taken, again, another oasis of hope, even though they were attached. There are all these guarantees that were abridged overnight by the Chinese Communist Party. They broke treaties, the UK Sino agreement. The basic law was thrown under the mat and into the shredder. And all these wonderful people in Hong Kong are in prison now, including Jimmy Lai.
You have long emphasized human rights in China.
Yes.
And how do you think democracy should think about the connection between human rights violations inside China and Beijing's external behavior towards Taiwan and its neighbors?
Well, I think they're hoping to project the model of tyranny and repression and cruelty on Taiwan. And if they were ever allowed to do it, which is why I'm so glad that President Trump has authorized an $11 billion sales of arms to Taiwan. We do have an agreement with them to help them. Part of that came out of the very ill-drafted agreement, the Shanghai Communique. I remember I met with with Li Peng when he was premier and was talking human rights to him directly in the big hall. And he goes, none of that was ever discussed. You know, it was the Shanghai communique talked about other things, never human rights. And what a missed opportunity that was during the Kissinger and Nixon era. They should have said human rights have to be at the core.
Yes.
And he said, they're nowhere to be found. Well, they are. You've agreed to all these treaties, some of them without ratification, but you say you're for them, and you don't implement any of them. You know, whether it be the Refugee Treaty or the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights.
And by joining the United Nations.
That's right. And they are really a malign influence on the UN, and certainly their threat to the ASEAN countries, the whole region, and Taiwan especially, is growing, not diminishing.
China increasingly relies on economic coercion and political pressure rather than open conflict, especially we can see that recently with their recent actions. What do you think Washington still underestimates about how this strategy works?
Well, I don't, and I'm part of Washington. I don't think Trump, he gets it. Yeah. I don't think he misses it at all. Biden missed it by a mile, and I'm not being partisan here. Yeah. Missed it by a mile. Enabled China like few. Clinton did it the worst. Yeah. Clinton used to attack George Herbert Walker Bush, the first Bush, said that he was aiding and abetting the dictatorship and pandering, which wasn't true, but Bush wasn't doing enough either. Yeah. And then he comes in and panders like nobody else ever has. I mean, we had a window of opportunity post Tiananmen Square and into the 1990s to really say we are in solidarity with the oppressed of China, not the oppressor. Yes. And he sided with the oppressor. He had the butcher of Beijing, Che Haitian, come to the White House, gave him a 19-gun salute. Everybody may or may not remember who Che Haitian was, but he was the operational commander that ordered the killing in Tiananmen Square. Because of that, he was elevated over time to becoming the defense minister. He comes right here to Capitol Hill and to Washington, and claims nobody died at Tiananmen Square, which is a big lie. I put together a hearing 2 days after he said that. We had all these witnesses who were there, including somebody from the People's Daily who tried to report and went to prison for it. All these wonderful people, and they said, we saw the killing, the blood, you know, and it was underestimated, but it was done in real time. Right on CNN even, you could see what was happening. And we have this clown coming here saying nobody died at Tiananmen Square. So I asked him through his embassy, anybody come and defend that indefensible remark, because we know you killed people. Well, Clinton had him over at the White House, full military honors. I mean, it was shameless. Yes. I can't say it's strong enough. Because it all played back in China, because I read People's Daily and I especially look at the Global Times, and there they are talking about how we took Washington by storm. The butcher of Beijing. Now, if we're going to be that stupid as a policy-making group, then especially the White House, and Clinton did it. I to this day can't believe it. On Hillary Clinton's first trip to China, first trip, the news media was on the plane with her. She says, I'm not going to raise human rights issues with China. I'm going to bring up climate change and trade. Missed it by a mile. Yeah. You could bring up those other things. Human rights has to be at the core. People are being tortured for their faith, democracy activists. We now know that they're killing people by the tens of thousands every year to take their organs. Yeah. I have a bill that passed in the House called the Stop Forced Organ Harvesting Act. And it passed 406 to 1 in the House of Representatives. You know, and it gets up to 20 years in prison for anybody in the supply chain that aids and abets it, and it imposes Magnitsky-like sanctions on Chinese leaders, because they're probably not going to be here to be prosecuted. Hopefully the Senate will take it up. This is how bad the barbarity has become. The Nazis did terrible and cruel things with medicine. The Chinese Communist Party is doing terrible and cruel things with medicine, and they masqueraded it somehow. That's they're giving, even when Putin and Xi Jinping were caught in an off-might Mike.
150 years.
Exactly. They want to live almost in perpetuity. How sad would that be on this earth? And here they are. Where do you think they're going to get the organs? From some 28-year-old kid, Falun Gong, or a Uyghur, and they'll kill them, maybe, and they get 2 to 6 organs from every victim, tens of thousands every single year, and they sell a lot of them to the Middle East, and they want Muslim organs. Yeah. Oh, where do they get those? They get them from the Uyghurs, and they kill them for it. I mean, this is a cruel dictatorship like few others in all of human history. It's right up there with the Nazis.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Still, there are some voices here in the United States arguing for more restraint on Taiwan to avoid escalation, the so-called escalation. What would you say to these people who believe that deterrence itself is destabilizing?
Oh, I think deterrence is the linchpin to preventing an invasion. We saw, matter of fact, when Biden egregiously left Afghanistan and left Americans there, but especially left our allies. The Global Times has done, Chinese newspaper, of course, online, anybody can read it, repeatedly has done op-eds that said, hey, Taiwan, the Americans are not going to have your back. Look what Biden did with their allies in Afghanistan. And we shed a lot of American blood in Afghanistan trying to promote human rights and democracy. And he did turn tail. It was one of the worst things ever in our history in terms of leaving a void that leads to terrible killings. So they do that all the time. Deterrence is the key. I mean, my first trip to the Soviet Union was in 1982 as a freshman. And there's no doubt that the deterrence brought by us and our allies in NATO was all important to preventing, and the mutual assured destruction idea that nobody's going to do a nuclear war because everyone gets obliterated, a mad theory, which is why we needed a good, capable defense. But deterrence is the key, and without it, if Putin doesn't have deterrence, Putin invades Ukraine, and there's a body of thought that I think is well founded. That he looked at Afghanistan too and said the Americans couldn't care less; they'll run. And Biden did a terrible job as president. Commander-in-chief for the world really is important. I was very involved with all of the East Bloc countries, including Poland, Romania. They weren't Warsaw Pact, but they were a country under Ceausescu, and it was always the deterrence of military coupled with diplomacy, and the diplomacy was made viable through the military and the peace through strength mantra. And so with Taiwan, peace through strength, which is why the $11 billion sale package, sends another message to the dictatorship in Beijing that we're not kidding, we're standing by our ally. All the other countries, Philippines, what they're doing with the boats constantly, with the water cannon. I mean, it's kind of frightening just how foolish it looks. You're water cannoning, a Philippine a boat, and but it's all about intimidation. Yes. And so the umbrella that American power helps to provide is that we stand with our allies. We stand with Japan, for example, the Philippines, and that buys peace, because otherwise these are aggressor people. There's something that nobody seems to talk about, but I do, because I've been on it since 1979. I got elected in 1980, and that is the one-child per couple policy in China, forced abortion. They're missing tens of millions of girls who were exterminated simply because they were girls, pursuant to the one-child policy. You're only allowed one in a boy preference society. They get the one, and it happens to be a boy, and the girl gets killed. But it was all coercive. We had decades of it, and they're missing all of these people, especially females. Men can't find wives to marry because they don't exist. The missing females, the missing daughters, and I've had multiple hearings on it. I'm the one who led the effort on defunding the United Nations Population Fund because of its hand-in-glove relationship with the Chinese Communist Party to impose this terrible genocidal policy on the people. They're using it as a genocide now against the Uyghurs. They've done it against others. And they have a depopulation problem that's starting. It's only going to get worse, which will make their belligerency and potential saber rattling even worse. So we're dealing with a very unstable country made that way. And a lot of the enabling of the forced abortion came right from Washington and from non-governmental organizations like Planned Parenthood and Population Council and these others who pushed the child limitation policies ad nauseum, and look what they got. They have chaos, and it could lead to war that way too. But I think deterrence is the linchpin.
And looking at the behavior of these countries like Russia, like China, like Iran, like Venezuela up until recently, we are dealing with the lack of accountability.
Yes.
And how do you think these regimes, these brutal countries, can be held liable for what they do?
Well, I think we need to be very serious about not trading and enabling trade between those countries. I wrote the Belarus Democracy Acts in 2004. We've renewed it and expanded it several times since. And what that said was that anybody who is found to be a violator of human rights doesn't get a visa to come here. Yes. Maybe they say, who cares? But they don't get one. And they can't do business here in the United States. And I'm glad to say, with regards to Belarus, the European Union followed our lead on that. And Lukashenko was isolated to a large extent. A lot of the political prisoners were let out of prison because of it. But again, they went into partnership with Putin, and now we have, and he stole the most recent election as well. But that kind of, if we look the other way, because we want to make money with a dictatorship like China, and they do whatever they want on human rights abuse, shame on us. I fault the Olympics Committee. I remember when they got agreements that there would be human rights protected. A cruel joke. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. Go to some other venue. It just didn't happen. And even the companies that were doing business, we had a hearing where we had all these companies that were making money hand over fist, U.S. companies in China. They wouldn't say a word about the genocide against the Uyghurs, for example. Bum's the word, because I don't want to lose market share. Shame on you. You're dealing with a Nazi-like dictatorship. Why can't we accept that? That doesn't mean you want to go to war. We don't. Nobody wants a war. You want to deter a war with good deterrence capabilities and a military that is second to none. But again, I fault us, the United States of America, and the Europeans to some extent, but especially us. When Bill Clinton delinked human rights from trade, we started selling them and giving them through theft, particularly on the atomic bomb area, all kinds of capabilities that have dual use for military. So their command and control is second to none, courtesy of the West, courtesy of our corporations. And had Clinton not done that, delinked human rights from trade, there wouldn't have been the opportunity to sell everything under the sun. We even sold them, a company here, satellite technology. They were having trouble with their satellites. And all of a sudden, now they have state-of-the-art on everything, courtesy of us. And after they get it sold to them by us, they throw us out, us being a lot of these companies. They steal the technology. There's no copyright protections whatsoever in China. So if you've got a patent or something that's really, really neat and you want to protect it, good luck. Go to China, they'll have it.
Yeah, they don't respect the copyright law at all.
But again, if you look at it, as early, way back, there was a Christopher Cox Commission that was convened. He was a congressman from California, did a magnificent job looking at dual use and all these other enabled by U.S. trade. And it's an indictment against Clinton. Yeah. He didn't do it as an indictment. He said, please, will everybody take notice? They're going to build up their military. They will project power everywhere, nuclear and through, and increasingly a blue water navy, and they have that. And that threatens, of course, the Taiwanese. And all that they do on drones and everything else is just, it's like exponentially made stronger because of U.S. trade.
And looking ahead, how can the United States and Taiwan deepen the cooperation politically, economically, and in the area of human rights to ensure Taiwan's security and democratic future in face of Chinese expansionism?
Well, we can continue the military connection, I think that's something that the Chinese government understands and takes note of. And I think the recent extraction of Maduro, who's an indicted crime boss, especially for the sale of drugs. He's also a human trafficker. And I wrote the trafficking laws for the United States. He ought to be indicted on that as well. But the flawless execution of that extraction in his capital, in his palace, for want of a better word, was amazing. And, you know, our military just, you know, I said it on the briefings, I can't talk about the secret ones, but it's amazing how they did it. And I think we're developing ever more that expertise to do what has to be done. And I'm sure Beijing took note of that as well. That, you know, the Americans, you know, we do have a superlative edge still. They are catching up in some ways. They have a numerical edge, though, in terms of troops they can deploy or could deploy. But I think, you know, we just, with Taiwan, we've got to be ironclad in everything we say, do, and project into the future that they are our trusted and best ally. And I think we will. There are people in some of the parties, you know, that don't see it that way, and they would abandon Taiwan, but they're not the dominant voice in Washington.
Thank you so much, Congressman.
Thank you.
This was Congressman Chris Smith, and I see you in the next one. Thank you.